Hey, sweet listeners. Welcome to the NetSuite podcast. I'm Ian McCue, a co-host of this podcast and Senior Content Marketing Manager at NetSuite. We have a great guest on today's show, Jason Kencevski from Speedmaster. Jason is the CEO of Speedmaster, a large manufacturer and seller of aftermarket auto parts for classic cars. To start, Jason shares why his dad started this business and how it turned into an industry leader over the past 45 years. He explains how his own interest in technology led the company to invest in new systems. That included implementing SAP Business One more than a decade ago. Jason dives into where the on-premises SAP application fell short when it came to running a global business and updating product data for 25,000 items. The CEO walks through how those frustrations led Speedmaster to replace SAP with NetSuite after a few years, and how a quote-unquote living, breathing system made an enormous difference. He digs into how modules including NetSuite One World, NetSuite WMS, and NetSuite's Ecommerce Advanced all help the company run a smoother, more efficient operation. Jason wraps up with a few thoughts on what the future holds for vintage cars and what that means for his company. Stay tuned, because all of that and more is coming up next.
You're listening to the NetSuite podcast, where we discuss what's happening within NetSuite, why we're doing it, and where we're heading in the future. We'll dive into the details about the software and the people at NetSuite who are behind all the moving parts. We'll also feature customer growth stories, discussing the ups and downs of running a company and how one integrated system can help your business continue to scale.
So to kick this off, Jason, tell us a little bit about Speedmaster. What do you manufacture and who do you sell to?
Yeah, so, Speedmasters have been around for over 40 years. We have a slogan, we just make awesome car parts. But drilling into those awesome car parts, we design, test, and manufacture over 25,000 V8 car spare parts, specifically aftermarket automotive V8 car spare parts.
And this is a business that your dad started back in 1979, and I saw on your website, a cool video about kind of how it started. But for people who haven't seen that video, don't know that much about Speedmaster, could you kind of share that story about how this business came to be?
Sure. Every great entrepreneurial story always starts with solving a problem. I think that problem was my dad, wanted to be the coolest kid in the block and have the fastest car so he could impress all the girls. And whilst doing that, he was racing, legally, of course. And, he was racing and he blew up his engine and had to find out what broke. Some of the components that broke were actually, weren't perfectly designed or could have been designed better. And, he started with a simple entrepreneurial spirit of making something better, and the rest is history, believe it or not.
Is this something that was kind of always your dad's passion, and did he have a knack for that stuff? I mean, it seems crazy to just say, this broke, okay, let me now build, a replacement part for it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because, I don't know, cars were his passion at the age, but, becoming one of the most influential brands in the world right now, I don't think he was envisioning to do that. I think at the time he's like, hey, I've broken something, I want to be fast, let me just fix it and move on. And it's just, I guess that's probably the best way to start. You don't always have to have the answer. You don't always have to think with the end in mind. I know, I appreciate, 7 Habits of Effective Leaders will tell you always think with the end in mind, but sometimes the start doesn't have to be that far-fetched.
So Speedmaster seems to take a lot of pride in the fact that it designs and manufactures over 25,000 car parts. Why is that kind of important to the company and maybe a source of pride for the business as well?
So I guess at its core, when you get to a certain point, the top end of town, there's 3 major players, which is Holly, Edelbrock, and Speedmaster. You try to scale, you try to be horizontal. So what happens is you try your best to start looking for companies to buy or just shortcuts to achieve your goal of widening your variety. So for us, we take a lot of pride in that. And the good thing is that we're still privately owned. So we take a lot of pride in making sure that everything we actually design, test, and manufacture in-house is actually done by our specialized team. And we're not looking for, which is fine, but we're not looking to find growth hacks to, acquire companies to grow quickly, and then you're not sure the quality of the products. You may have some problems. Also, at the same time, you could inherit some of their bad behaviors too. So, it's always been the founder's ethos, to really be hands-on to design, test, and manufacture most of those components.
And it seems like it's kind of become increasingly rare for an automotive components company to design it and make its own products. Why is that? Is it more cost effective to go other places typically, and it's hard to do in-house?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, touching on the scale portion, it's hard to scale.
Mm-hmm.
It's really difficult to produce, that amount of SKUs in a short period of time. To scale, I guess, if you want to increase 50 or 100,000 SKUs, it's a lot quicker and easier to just buy a brand and have their offering. We try to keep it in-house and push that ahead. And I guess that means, in turn, you're not buying a company, you're investing in other people. They work for you or work, directly for you or indirectly for you. So, the industry becomes intertwined with Speedmaster a lot more, as opposed to just, buying and selling someone else's parts not to solve a problem, but to increase a product offering, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And part of your mission is kind of to create products that, I'm quoting your mission here, are inspired by the blend of old and new technology. How is that idea of kind of blending old and new, how is that core to what Speedmaster is, and how does it maybe help differentiate you from some of the other companies out there that make automotive parts?
Yeah, so exactly that. The mission statement is a blend of old and new technology. So probably the best way to explain it is we're an aftermarket automotive car component manufacturer. So we have to solve a problem. Like every good business, we have to solve a problem. Typically the problem is that people want to go faster, or, the engine or whatever it may be, the specific component is, under higher amount of stress. I mean, back in the day, engines would only make 25 horsepower. Now they're making 400 horsepower all the way up to a street, like a current model Mopar, or like a Dodge Chrysler Mopar Demon has almost 1,000 horsepower. So those sorts of engines back in the day were race car engines, and now they're cars that you buy off the shelf at your local Dodge dealer. So what happens is, if to solve a problem, you want to be profitable and you want to do it the quickest way possible, and typically the easiest way is just to solve the problem, and you design something that solves the problem. What we do is we actually try to solve a problem by incorporating the original view, look and feel of the item, which becomes timeless. So I think Apple do it very well. If you have a look at a lot of the Apple products, if you go back in time, a lot of the look and feel, I think there was a brand, I forget what it's called, but they're all, it's basically replicating 1960s and 70-year-old products today. So they become timeless, and Speedmaster's aim on that front would be to create a timeless looking component, not one that's functional and highly profitable, if that makes sense, which makes it tough, and that's what makes us different. We're timeless.
Yeah, absolutely. One more question kind of about your history as a brand. So this company started as Pete's Performance about 45 years ago, like we said, or almost 45 years ago, and it's now become a big global operation. As we kind of think about how, what started as a small storefront almost 45 years ago turned into what it is today, what are some kind of key moments you think in the company's history that got it to where it is now?
Heaps. Adversity for sure. Originally my dad was solving a problem of just making car components to solve small issues that he found, and he'd become a manufacturer back in the day. But one massive key turning point was, my dad had created a part that just wasn't working, and the typical thing of not asking for help. People are these days are too scared to ask for help. My dad was completely the opposite. He went to America and was at the SEMA show in Las Vegas in November every year. It's been around for, I think, 50 or 60 years. And he took one of his HR distributors, which was problematic at the time, and he couldn't get the phasing right. So, he took it to the show and he spoke to one of the guys there who was a technician. He's like, hey, I've got this problem. He gave him the distributor, and a day later he came back and said, hey, I've solved the problem. This is all it is. The phasing's out. This is what it is. And when the guy brought it back, it was really funny because he brought the item back and he brought this gentleman along. My dad had no idea who it was, and he started asking questions. Oh, how many do you make? What, like, how do you make them? And my dad's was very simple at the time. Yeah, we make a lot. He's like, what do you mean a lot? And he's like, oh, we make 500 a year. It's a very, very good item. We make them in Australia. We design, test, and manufacture them in Australia. We're very, very proud. The guy's like, okay, great. Would you ever look to export them to America? My dad's like, yep, sure, of course, why not? So the next day the man came along, and I think at the time, I forget what the company was called at the time, but it was one of the largest distributors of automotive car parts at the time. He came along and said, I'd like to buy your capacity of 500 per year, if that's okay. And my dad's like, oh, wow, yeah, of course, no problem. And he's like, but I need that per month. So, what my dad was doing in 1 year, potentially, he just got an order for 12 years or 12 months worth of orders in one conversation. So on the back of just the most random experience of, hey, I need help, how do I fix it? People respect that and respect the fact that you're willing to make things better, willing to ask for help. And that was pretty much the start of what you now know as Speedmaster America.
And how long ago was that? When did that happen?
So I think it was probably close to 25 years ago.
Okay.
We've been here for now, again, I just don't quote me on it, but around 22 years. That was almost close to 25 years ago. Yeah, believe it or not.
So, Jason, you obviously have a long history with the business. You grew up around it. You today are CEO and have been for quite a while. But as you just kind of look at your personal time with the company from when you first got involved and maybe when you first kind of started to take a leadership role within the company to where it is today, how do those two things compare? How does the Speedmaster of today compare to the one that you remember from early adulthood, childhood, anything like that?
Yeah, lots of changes. Definitely a couple of things. Definitely keeping up with the times, as you should. And I think this one has some of my flair attached to it. I'm not saying that all the amazing things that Speedmaster have done am I doing. I'm saying that a lot of things that a lot of the direction I'd like for the company and the brand to go towards are kind of heavily influenced by myself. Like, for example, I'm a tech geek. I think we'll touch on that a little bit later. I'm a tech geek. I built computers when I was a kid. All my life I've been breaking DOS code in games and trying to hack computer games and whatnot, building computers. So always have had a tech-savvy background. So applying that sort of tech savviness to Speedmaster was definitely one of the core fundamentals moving forward for sure.
And a key part of kind of keeping up with the times, like you said as well. So makes sense.
Yeah.
So is this a company that kind of always saw value in technology and invested in kind of new and better technology as it became available? Or would you say that there was more of a shift when you came into more of a leadership position?
So definitely more of a shift. The business was heavily infatuated with building amazing car parts, building awesome car parts. And whatever technology was required to do so. You're talking, whether it be manufacturing automation, whether it be the latest CNC machine. So, our number one priority on a technology front would have always been around the product. So there's at least 3 pillars to Speedmaster: our people, our products, and our approach. And I think the biggest one that I've impacted is the approach, and the influence through technology would have been definitely, heavily influenced from myself for sure. The efficiency and the automation that Speedmaster adheres to today on a global scale is, almost second to none. Mm-hmm. Back then it was, just business basics. You sell an item, you invoice an item, you get paid for an item. It's just business basics, but it's not like that today. And definitely, on the back of my heavy influence. Also, my brother, who was part of the business for about 6 years, and a lot of drastic changes happen, on the back of his help as well.
You were on SAP Business One, a solution probably a lot of people listening to this are familiar with. I guess first off, kind of how long did you use that software for, and where did you feel like it really fell short in terms of supporting the business?
Yeah, so at the time we were looking at different solutions. We weren't too sure about the power or the ability of cloud computing at the time. It was 2012-13. I mean, cloud computing wasn't new; it was old. Just at the time, it felt weird that mm-hmm. Your whole infrastructure could come to a grinding halt if you lost your internet connection. Internet's not a new thing, so it shouldn't have been two things. Nothing. But it
serious. Was. I mean, people were skeptical of the cloud for a long time. So
yeah. And so for that reason, we moved to SAP, which is an in-premise solution. It was tough. I mean, but that's why I'm so passionate about sharing the NetSuite Oracle messaging, because we've had such a great run with that. SAP was daunting. It took 18 months to understand our needs, to roll out the case of the Speedmaster case or project, I guess. And it was, we'll touch on it probably later, I'm sure, with any of your other questions, but it was a flat system. It was a local server. Every time we would increase, every year we'd have to increase the server, increase the hard drive. We went from 1 server to 2 servers to 3, 3 servers in Sydney, 3 servers in LA. It was just becoming a nightmare for sure. And this was, you're talking only 2 years into 2 years into it. So we're not talking 10 years. You're talking to go from 1 server to 3. We had to become experts in RAID and other technologies. Oh boy,
I think that paints a good picture. I mean, the fact that it was only a couple years before you were running into serious problems in terms of its ability to scale with the business, maybe says a lot. And maybe would you say that's part of what convinced you that maybe the cloud is the way to go because we're going to get that scalability that we clearly need?
We moved to the cloud solution because Oracle NetSuite was the solution for us, and it happened to be on the cloud. I guess if NetSuite was an on-premise solution, I don't think we would have run into the same problems. NetSuite just obviously have got it right, so potentially that's probably why they're in the cloud. I'm not sure, but I can guarantee you. Well, I can't guarantee that NetSuite or Oracle would have got it right, but they have, and we only moved to the cloud because of that fact.
Was it a struggle in particular to manage international operations on Business One? Because I think at that point you were already becoming or were a global company, right? Was that a particular pain point?
For sure. The original solution that was rolled out was definitely a pain point. It was a local solution for Australia, a local solution for America, and then potentially running a pseudo hierarchy over the two. We didn't even get to touch on on the Asian manufacturing portion of it, and it was just better understanding that. And even within 2 years or 2 to 3 years, we still hadn't had that pseudo global connection. So it was impossible. Could be because there was still two localized solutions.
And so you start your search for a new ERP system. You realize it's time for a change. How did NetSuite kind of get on your radar, first of all?
Yeah, so we sat down and we had a meeting, and we're coming up to our 3-year period for SAP. It was me, our CTO or CM, Chief Marketing Technology Officer, and one of our auditors. 3 of us sat down, had lunch one day, and we discussed, the way that SAP was working and, remote desktoping into a local LA connection to work on a local solution. Things like just adding a product in both locations meant you had to update all the item information on one location locally, and then remote desktop to another location, and then update all the same data. And obviously you had the lag and all the delay of the remote desktop, so it was impossible even just to create products. Take half an hour to create one product. And so these are some of the things that we're discussing. And we were 3 years into SAP. We were verging on, renewal or, taking on another 3-year stint. I think that's typically, how people go along with there. And we're like, what do we do? Do we stick to this? At the time, it was either we cut our losses and move on, or we apply another 3 years. And I've got to be honest with you, it was touch and go. We've had just finished investing a lot of money. We hadn't seen any return at all from the SAP implementation. So to kind of ask for more budget from the company, can you imagine? We've just raised God knows how much money to roll out this solution, and then to go ahead and say, no, we are moving to a different solution after 3 years, and then asking to raise, I don't know, the same amount, more or less, would have been scary. But that was the decision we made. So to answer your question specifically, how we came across it, well, our CMTO started doing his homework. He's like, let me find an alternative solution. Let me see what I can find. And he did.
And how did you decide that NetSuite was the right system for you?
I'll jump on the back of our founder and instill, some faith and trust in the people who made those decisions. So Eric and Dave at the time did some homework searching around. We were looking at different solutions, SAP HANA, I think it was at the time, Demandware, which is, I'm not sure if that's still around. Magento was also an option, who were trying to play with the solution of, hey, we're a integrated ERP, not ERP, but they were trying to be a PM and a few other different things.
Sure.
And so they had basically done their homework and said, hey, I think this is the one that we need to go for. Had a closer look, and we made the right choice.
So you went live with NetSuite back in 2017, six years ago now. As the CEO, what were some of the biggest immediate benefits that you noticed?
So I'm going to put it out there for you today, Ian. I want to patent the word for all future Oracle NetSuite conversations. NetSuite is a living, breathing system, and you've heard it here today, man. We're gonna trademark that term because it's true. It's a living, breathing system. So when you say benefits, let's just go back to that terminology. So back in the day, you would update an item. Whether it be a price or a weight or a dimension or something, it would be flat. It would update the price. Or say, for example, even just like an item at its basics. An item, today arrives and it used to cost $5, and now it costs $6. NetSuite has the ability to be living and breathing, and you can create, systems and infrastructure, or, to actually, have a minimum markup. Okay, if it costs $5, it has to go to 10. If it costs 6, it has to go to 11, and so on and so forth. It's a living, breathing system. SAP was, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to compare the two, but I will.
No, you are.
Great. SAP at the time was, it was just a dead system. You'd update a data point and it would be dead in the water, and you'd have to go along and try and, find out which GLs it was connected to, which GL accounts, and just go through and really just update that accordingly across the entire platform. And it was disaster. Now, you update an item, for example, if you'd update an item, whether it be a title or a description or a weight, or let's just talk about price. If I update a price right now, Ian, it'll go live not only in Australia, it'll go live globally within the moment I hit save. The price of that item will be saved and will be live globally. It'll then be live on our website. It'll be live on all our marketplaces. It'll be live on all our resellers. In a heartbeat, it goes live worldwide. Is that mad?
And what kind of business impact does that make? Does it mean less staff? Does it just mean you're spending less time on this stuff and your colleagues are spending less time on stuff? What's the business impact of, you update something in one place and it's good to go, it's updated everywhere?
The impact is so monumental, and it can only be explained in micro increments. It's like saying, you look at a beach and you've got, a kilometer of sand, but I'm going to explain to you what makes that beach, and it's grain by grain.
Yeah.
And that's what NetSuite does. So where do I start? Well, okay, I go ahead and change a price on an item today from $50 to $100. That then goes live across the world in a heartbeat. Then that means that as a brand, we have total transparency and ownership of our pricing, of our brand, of our item. So then you're removing poor customer service, poor brand perception. Can you imagine if Apple for tomorrow decides to increase the cost of their iPhone from $1,000 to $1,100, and it's only increased on their website, but yet Best Buy and all the other people don't update their price, and then there's all these discrepancies, and then all of a sudden you've got, your brand credibility goes down. It's just a monumental wave of issues that it causes.
How did 6 out of the top 7 best performing tech stocks gain visibility and control over financials, inventory, planning, and budgeting with NetSuite by Oracle? Answers at netsuite.com/code. netsuite.com/code.
Jason, what types of insights and kind of reports did you get with NetSuite that you just didn't have before, you couldn't trust before?
Back to the one-liner of it being a living, breathing system. Just everything, first things first is, SAP and other solutions have reporting. So there's, reports are reports, I guess. The difference is that these reports, you have a level of trust, right? You can actually trust them. And I'm not saying you can't trust the ones on SAP, but you're just not sure if a GL is updated. You're not sure, when you run a P&L report today, it will be with whatever changes happen today. You don't have to run anything in the background to confirm or check. It's all living, breathing. It's right there. And that kind of builds trust across all the entire solution. But with the reporting, it being living and breathing, you're not. Again, I think I've explained it in the past where, I watched a keynote speaker about somebody, and they were just talking about the impact of having data at your fingertips and that transparency. Back in the day, businesses would report on a 12-month period, and then reporting on a 12-month period was too long because, you can't steer the ship in the right direction. It's too long. Then it became quarterly because that's, the best that we could crunch data. Quarterly then turned into monthly. Monthly turned into weekly, and weekly then daily then hourly, and now real time. And NetSuite's at real time. So the reporting is real time. And I think another analogy that's pretty cool was, I think it was like something like if an airplane leaves from LA. So imagine this, you get in a flight, again, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure this is right. If you get on a plane in LA and it's heading to New York, which is straight across the country, and I think they were saying if it's 1 degree out or 2 degrees out, it'll end up in Hawaii or something ridiculous.
Huh.
So an aeroplane, for example, at that point, it's not going to wait till it gets to Hawaii and say, oh, gee, something's wrong. It'll realize it's 2 degrees or 1 degree out after, I don't know, half an hour, 15 minutes, depending on the flight plan, and adjust and move to, move forward towards New York. And I think when we talk about reporting, it's a similar situation. Everyone can report. The question is, can you report on a real-time basis to make those course corrections, in real time? And that's the secret. Often people get up there and talk about those course corrections in real time, and that's one of the biggest, well, not one of the biggest. There's many factors that make Oracle NetSuite an amazing solution, but there's reporting and there's reporting, I guess. So yeah.
And can you paint the picture at all about how that reporting helps you make better business decisions? Do any examples or kind of use cases come to mind where you can take that information and apply it to help the business be more profitable, make the right decision for the future, whatever it might be?
Yeah, sure. So multiple ways. I mean, one of them would be almost every company wants to minimize stock on the shelf, so the better the data is, the more, effective decision making you can make. So for example, as a company that we hope customers will always try to ask for Speedmaster first, but sometimes if you don't have a Speedmaster product, they may need it, they go and buy it somewhere else. Part of that philosophy is for us to make sure that we have the item on the shelf whenever the customer needs it. But it's also not a very healthy position to be in too if you're overstocking too much on the shelf too, because that's not healthy for cash flows. So you could have stock tied up on the shelf for 12 months. That 12 months slows down growth in a different department or a different product or a different in R&D. That money's effectively taking it away from somewhere else. So to be better at what we do, with real-time data, we're able to have an inventory turns of, say, 2 or 3 times a year, which is at an industry standard, very, very high industry standard. So that allows you to then have a faster turnover, which means, you're not investing in unnecessary stock, which means you've got access to a higher amount of cash flow, and that gives you the ability to grow without having to borrow or slow down, So just on that front alone, just the ability to have a super effective cash flow is second to none for especially private businesses, Ian.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, we can only spend what we earn. If I make $1, I can only spend $1. I don't have the luxury of being a public company where I can make 1 and spend 20.
Yeah, or just someone else's money, right?
Yeah.
You don't have a venture capitalist breathing down your neck.
Yes.
So digging a little bit into some specific NetSuite modules, I'll start with NetSuite One World, which Speedmaster actually used from day one. How did that just simplify everything that goes into running a business that goes across Australia, the US, as well as China?
Sure. So, One World centralizes everything, adds transparency. Again, we just use that simple analogy of if an item gets changed or updated or modified in one location, it's instantly modified across the world. We have our research and development team in Australia who make a lot of changes every day. They're making changes to items. Say, for example, just a simple bill of material where they go ahead and say, you know what, we're going to change this bill of material to a different component or a different part. We don't have to then go along and do a traditional method of, printing bill of materials, putting them on the wall, educating people of what's in them. The R&D team have made a decision of what that bill of material is going to look like moving forward. They make a change to the system. The moment that's live, the next day that item gets pulled, it will have the new components, and it really doesn't. We don't have to bridge the gap of communication. It's done. It's what it needs to be. So it even just removes all those legacy, versions of communication that aren't necessary.
You talked a little bit there about how NetSuite plays a role in one part of your manufacturing with the bill of materials, but could you just kind of explain how Speedmaster uses NetSuite to help manage its manufacturing and supply chain?
Sure. So, again, it's a living, breathing system. So, we set what we thought was minimum maximums at the time, and then the system continues to get smarter and smarter, and it understands the forecasting of what's coming in, what's going out, when it's going to arrive, when it's not, and it continues to adjust in real time. That airplane that could go to Hawaii, we could be that a component that could be coming 2 weeks late or a month late or 2 months too early. It's adjusting that in real time. So those decisions again are made in real time, and it helps ensure that we either have the item on the shelf or not too much of it. We use the WMS straight out of the NetSuite box, and we've won best in class many awards for the way we use that solution in our facility, because it can be that way. And just to give an example, if you were to come and see it firsthand, you're more than welcome to. But the maximum human handling time of any parcel is 10 seconds. That's human handling time, and 4 clicks of a button. So literally, someone goes to a shelf, clicks 4 buttons. I think they're scanning the location twice, the item twice, and it goes on a conveyor and it's done. And literally after 4 clicks of a button and a maximum handling time of 10 seconds, that item is on its way to you or me or whoever it may be. And obviously you should go and buy some parts after this conversation just to test it. But yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And did you have any system in place before the WMS, or is it really something that helped you drive that efficiency to the level where it is now?
No, nothing. It was all paper-based. And again, SAP didn't have a native WMS. It was probably a plugin. It was probably a third party. There is amazing WMS solutions out there. There is amazing WMS solutions out there. But then to become a professional in connecting that solution, finding a solution, engaging in a third party, adding another layer of connectivity, and more silos. So some people use this solution, some people use that, different logins.
And then NetSuite inventory management, obviously another piece of the equation you use here. How does that help you track and manage the inventory for 150,000 plus SKUs that you sell?
It's not existent. It's not existent. What used to happen in a month to 2 months of crunching data with Excel spreadsheets, we're anti-Excel, we're Mac users and NetSuite only users, so we try to avoid Excel as much as we can. Obviously it's a very powerful tool, but we want to centralize everything in NetSuite. So it's basically dropped what used to take, again, another external silo, another external team of 2 who would crunch the data, double check, triple check, make sure that the forecasting was right. All that now is done real time and via the suggestion of the system. We still run reports just to double check to make sure that something's not missing, or humans always know better, so we go back and double check something. But I don't think we've ever found a discrepancy to date. So what used to happen in days and months now happens in real time, actually. So seconds. I'll even put a time on it. It happens in seconds, because just to get your head around a time number, because it's happening real time.
It seems like you're a big believer in continuing to add to the suite versus going and trying to find external solutions, an external WMS, external manufacturing system, whatever. Why is that? Like, what value do you see in continuing to add to NetSuite rather than going and looking for other solutions that might be great, but, aren't part of the suite?
You'll only know until you try. Silos are tough to manage. You have any external software, by default, overnight you're going to need a in-house or consultant to manage those 2 connections. And just simple answers like for example, I guess, let me give you a prime example. If you have a external WMS, who in the company creates the logins, the usernames, the passwords? How does all that work? Where does it come from? Where does it go? Who assigns the licenses? Are those licenses paired? Just simple things like which you don't even think about. Like, is that license that's in NetSuite? Because obviously NetSuite's your ERP, it's also potentially your HR module. So you're hiring this person, you're putting their information in there. Have they got the right license for the WMS? Oh no, that's a different license. Someone else has to log in. So is that a HR job? Does human resources align that login? Does the IT team connect that login? Or assign them the right rules and responsibilities in that WMS? So we don't have that problem in NetSuite. We have all the rules and responsibilities. The moment you onboard a new staff member, you onboard them, you assign them their role, whether it be a warehouse manager, whether it be a picker, a packer, or a web specialist. We've got a number of different roles that we've created. And the moment that the HR team put an ad out for that position, it's assigned to a role. That person starts, they get onboarded, and by default, they know the role and the responsibility, and they are all live, all in one go, So just imagine that. Like, just even the simplest of facts.
It's the little stuff. It adds up, huh?
Yeah, let alone the big stuff if something goes severely wrong. Oh, geez.
And then SuiteCommerce Advanced, I also wanted to touch on. I think you've touched a little bit about e-commerce and how NetSuite helps there, but how important is e-commerce to the business, to Speedmaster?
I used to sell computers back in 1999. I was 16 years old selling computers online. So e-commerce is at my core one of the things I loved. And when you say how important is it to Speedmaster, I guess the only way I can answer that is it's been important to me, since I was a kid. And while e-commerce was a competitive advantage, which it was for a long time, it was very important. Today, I dare say, e-commerce coexist with the rest of the company. Like, e-commerce has become like everyone needs an accountant, everyone needs HR, everyone needs 401k. So e-commerce is now a core fundamental of a business. So it's not a competitive advantage anymore. But to your point, how important it is in Speedmaster, it's been a core fundamental to me for over over 25 years at least. So that being said, we were early adopters. Being an early adopter, we had a lot of success in e-commerce. And for that reason, we want to continue that success. So we want to continue to showcase that we're at the forefront of technology, because we always have been. It'd be pretty lame or crap to be this front runner, early adopter, and then all of a sudden just get chewed up by everyone else, and then go, they just do e-commerce.
Yeah.
So,
is it a channel where you still generate a lot of sales, and also where that you feel like drives a lot of awareness for the brand?
100%. So much so that we actually take pride in the way we have been able to amalgamate bricks and mortar into the e-commerce environment. We have an amazing loyalty program, which we shared on stage with the founder at NetSuite World in Australia, in which we still push traditional offline customers who normally would pick up the phone to go on our website and actually make that purchase. So, we completely digitize that offering. So it's a huge part of what we do. And second to that, why it's so important is because, with a massive consumer base that we have, we can't have those one-to-one interactions. It's impossible to have, say, for example, we've got, 500,000 clients. I can't have 500,000 conversations every time we bring out a new product. It's very important to the fundamentals of Speedmaster, because it's the only way to continue to share our messaging. It's the only way to continue to share who we are, what we're doing, and where we're going. And it shortcuts all that ability.
And looking at the product specifically, you had Magento before, which is now called Adobe Commerce after they were acquired a couple years back. But why did you decide to move from Magento to Suite Commerce Advanced?
So step one is to invest in our partnerships. The first step is always to offer, or to see if there's an offer with the native solution, in this situation being Oracle, NetSuite, and Suite Commerce Advanced. So we did go along that path. That would always be our preferred choice. So you might argue it's not the best choice, because we have a bias, in something that's native. But ironically, it ends up being, when we discuss it and we can talk about what makes it good and bad, it actually becomes a no-brainer, as less of a biased opinion and actually more of a no-brainer. And we did have, yes, you're right, we did move from Magento to Suite Commerce Advanced. The images, data, and everything is coming from the ERP. So if I update an image on NetSuite, the ERP side of it, if I update an image at the title description, because it's a center of truth, within the click of the save button, it's now live on our website. It's live worldwide. It's one center of truth.
Last thing I'll ask you about in terms of NetSuite products is the NetSuite Connector, which I think is a more recent addition for you guys, and you use it for eBay and Amazon, where you also sell your products. How does it kind of help you manage, sales through those channels?
How does it work? Again, it just does it. It just gets the job done, right? So it's there. It's there, but it's not. Ian, it's there. It's not. So we say, we opt to sell on eBay, and the item that you nurture and maintain in NetSuite is now on eBay. What else do you want me to tell you? The item that you want, the item that you maintain and nurture, and you want it on Amazon, goes to Amazon. You select it, you go through and tell it in NetSuite which categories and so on and so forth you want it to go into, and it gets there. There's none of this sending data to a third-party cloud solution, which is also another PIM, because technically it has to be a PIM. It stores all that data. Then there's, by the way, then there's some, don't even get me into this conversation. By the way, then you've got inventory issues. The other thing is that you haven't got real-time inventory issues. Now I'm going to tangent on that Magento situation.
Got you fired up.
Yeah, it got me fired up. I mean, there's also the inventory tangent. So, if you sell something on your website on NetSuite, it's it's gone. With silos, you're then having to send FTP feeds, or trying your best to have the data. And a lot of these companies who create these connectors don't want data flowing real time, because it's a massive undertaking. Mm-hmm. So they want a 5-minute window, or a 2-minute window, or a 10-minute window. I mean, I think we sold 5 or 6 million items last year. We sell one item in less than a minute every minute.
Right.
So if that data is flowing less, not real time, you're now selling items that aren't in stock. And can you imagine the customer service and the complaints and all the rest? So back to the connector on the other side, the same thing. You don't have a silo. You don't have a third-party cloud solution. You literally say, hey, this is what's selling, and it's live, it's connected, it's instant. You're not maintaining another silo, and it's amazing.
All right, and then as we start to wrap up here, first I just kind of want to ask, what does the future look like for Speedmaster as a business? Do you have any key goals, and what's kind of your strategy for maybe reaching some of those goals?
Two things, we continue to be retail ready. So we signed AutoZone a little while back. We're now live. You're talking 7,000 stores across 3 countries, or 3 continents actually, I think as well. So 7,000 stores. And what that means is the scale of that. They currently offer 3,000 of our items, which are more related to their demographic, which has over 2 million data points of fitment data. So it fits year, make, and model. So the aim would be to continue to grow that portion of the business, going into O'Reilly's and so on and so forth, and all the other major manufacturers, along with everything else that we've got going on. So continuing that growth and those relationships, which are, one to many, are based upon data. It's all data driven. It's got nothing to do with automotive anymore at that point. It's just driven on data. So as we continue to grow at that retail scale, we have to have a lot of tons and tons of fitment data. So having the ability to be able to have all that data in NetSuite and not worry about buying another server and adding a RAID 3, 4, I don't know what they're up to now, is important. So that's definitely step one, continually adding and growing the data set in the system. And also potentially looking at, opening up a second, third, and fourth facility closer to the East Coast, where 70% of our stuff is shipped. And I've used this in one of my videos as well, which is awesome, because if we did decide to open up a third or fourth facility in a different location, we can do it with an internet connection and a laptop, because that's all it takes.
Yeah.
It's pretty mental.
Yeah, it is wild. Something I just thought about as we were sitting here, you sell a lot of parts for vintage cars, but what's vintage is always changing, right, as time goes on. Is that a challenge in the sense that you're constantly trying to source, make, design parts for new cars each year, maybe even more frequently than that?
Sure. So yeah, every year that goes by, another one becomes vintage. The good thing about that is that the manufacturers, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, Dodge, they create a window of an engine that spans sometimes 10 years, sometimes 20, 30, 40. Ironically, one engine almost went for 30 or 40 years, and then within a 10-year period, they built 3 or 4 of them. So as that continues to grow and they become vintage, we'll continue to build those components and comparts to solve those problems, But for us, I think, we've carved out the niche portion of what we want. Most of these cars will be weekend cars. Eventually they'll be weekend cars, ones that they drive on a Saturday and Sunday. As beautiful as the nitrogen and electric technology continues to come along, it's beautiful. It's really nice. It's great. On multiple factors. So as that continues, I think there'll be a phase of like a window where, probably like a 10-year window where engines will won't become vintage, and people will just continue to grow through that period, up to like a 1990s or so.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, Jason, and let's wrap up with this. So you're a CEO. If you're talking to another CEO of a kind of similar company in the sense that similar size, you guys sell products, how would you make the case for why they should consider investing in NetSuite?
Yeah, tough one. First things first is, you'd have to buy me a coffee, if so we can chat about it for sure. Hopefully it was done over a coffee. Yeah, I'm not a big beer drinker. But one thing I can definitely tell you is that the heart-to-heart that I would have is all businesses require human and technology capital. One thing's for sure is I can't help them find the human capital, as that's tough. Even I can't solve that problem for myself. But one thing I'm sure of, NetSuite is the answer to their technology needs. And I can be pretty blunt when I say that you'd be very hard-pressed to find something compares. So again, every business needs 2 things, human capital, technology capital, and you'd be hard-pressed to find something that beats the technology portion that NetSuite has to offer for sure.
Awesome. Well, it's great having you on, Jason, and appreciate the time.
Anytime. Thank you, Ian.
That was quite the endorsement for NetSuite Jason offered at the end there, but I think it speaks to the system's flexibility and how it can make a real difference for a number of different businesses. Speedmaster is such an impressive company when you look at the volume of business they're doing and the efficiency of their operations, and it's awesome to hear more about the role NetSuite has played in that journey. I want to thank Jason for joining us on this episode of the podcast. I also want to thank our editing crew at Oracle and, as always, all of you for tuning in. If you want more episodes just like this one, make sure you subscribe to our channel and give us a rating and review. Thanks so much, and talk soon.
You just listened to the NetSuite podcast. Be sure to tune in every week with more NetSuite developments, stories, and insights into the benefits of one integrated system to help you run your business.